Hey, hey, hey. We're at the very end of this chapter. We're going to talk about muscle tissue, the nervous tissue, and we'll end the chapter talking about tissue repair. So muscle tissues are tissues that have a very important function. Their main function is movement of materials, so either movement of the entire body or movement of materials throughout the body. And as a byproduct of the movement, they produce heat. So they also help in thermoregulation of the body. There are three types of muscle, and you can see them here in this cute little picture: smooth muscle, cardiac muscle, and skeletal muscle. And we'll talk about each of them a little bit closer, or a little more thoroughly on the preceding slides. So this here is skeletal muscle. Skeletal muscle is a striated muscle. You don't see the striations really great in this, but you can kind of see them up here. They are multinucleate, and you can see the multiple nuclei on the muscle fibers. The smooth muscle here is singly nucleated. The cells are fusiform in shape, and fusiform is kind of like the structure of a cat's eye. So the nuclei tend to be long and thin. They thin out on each end. And then we have cardiac muscle down here, which is also striated, and you can see those striations better than you can see up here. The striations in the cardiac muscle and the skeletal muscle are composed of the overlapping thick and thin filaments. Cardiac muscle is a branched muscle, and it typically also only has one nucleus, but may be binucleate. It just depends. And so we're going to talk about each of these figures and the functions of those muscles. So we'll start with skeletal muscle. That's this one. Skeletal muscle is voluntary muscle, which means we control it. It has nervous innervation, and if we want to move any body part, our nerves send signals, and then we're able to move those body parts. Skeletal muscle is named for where the muscle is located. It's located on the skeleton, so it attaches to our skeleton and helps us to move the body. It's always multinucleate, and it has the same proteins interacting as cardiac muscle does. That's all I'll say for now. So smooth muscle, which is this middle muscle, is involuntary, which means we don't have any control over it. It also needs nervous innervation, just like skeletal muscle does. Whereas skeletal muscle is multinucleate, smooth muscle is singly nucleated. The cells are very small, comparatively speaking, but they still function in the same activity, movement. So skeletal muscle moves the body, smooth muscle moves materials through the body, like blood through the blood vessels, nutrients through the GI tract, waste products through the GI tract. It's smooth because there's no overlapping of thick and thin filaments like there is in the skeletal or cardiac muscle. Smooth muscle also is the only one of the three muscle tissues that is able to undergo normal mitotic division, so it can fix itself. And then we have cardiac muscle. That's this one down here. This one is also involuntary, like smooth muscle. Can be singly nucleated or binucleate, so more similar to smooth muscle again. But the cells are branched in cardiac muscle. That's one of the big tells that it is cardiac muscle. They contain intercalated discs. Intercalated discs are regions in the cardiac muscle, and you don't really see them in this figure. You can kind of see one right there, that darker line there. The intercalated discs, and you can see one there, you can see one there. So you can see them, they're just not as pronounced as in some pictures that I've seen. The intercalated discs contain desmosomes and gap junctions. So these are, desmosomes are a junction that holds the different cells together. Gap junctions are junctions that allow for communication. So cardiac muscle is only found in the heart, and it does not need nervous innervation. So these gap junctions are really important because that's how the region of the heart that stimulates the contraction sends signals to the rest of the heart through those gap junctions, so that our heart is constantly beating on its own. We have a heartbeat prior to innervation of the nervous system. The nervous system does innervate the heart, but the function of the innervation is to slow that heart rate down or speed the heart rate up. It does not cause the heart to beat. And so this is a figure of nervous tissue. So nervous tissue is the final tissue. It's composed of neurons and neuroglial cells. Neurons are the main cells that function in the nervous system. They take in information, so sensory information. They determine what needs to be done with that information, and they transmit that information to effectors. And then the effectors bring about whatever change needs to occur. Neuroglial cells are your protectors of the nervous system. So they support and protect the neurons. We have neuroglial cells that act as the phagocytes, so the microglial cells. We have neuroglial cells that wrap around the neurons to make the action potentials or the information travel faster. We have neuroglial cells that just help to maintain the chemical environment of the cell body. So they have lots of different functions. Neurons cannot undergo, or typically don't undergo, mitotic divisions. In general, neurons can't. But neuroglial cells can. And so here's another figure from your book, or from your text that shows the neuron. This is the cell body of the neuron. You can see the cell body there. Then you see outside the cell body these little tiny structures. Those are the neuroglial cells. Here's the axon, and these are dendrites. Axons end in these axon terminals down here. So the last thing we're going to talk about then is injury and tissue repair. There are different types of tissues that, and depending on the type of tissue, you're going to be able to repair the tissue completely through a process called regeneration, or you're going to end up forming a fibrosis scar, which is scar tissue. And so you all probably have some scar somewhere on your body that you can tell a story about when you, slammed your fingers or broke your leg or who knows what, right? Had a surgical procedure. Those all tend to leave some type of a scar. And in growing, we all have gotten a scar at some point in time in our life. So I posted this picture. This is a figure of actually my hand after I went running one night because somehow my shoes didn't realize that they were supposed to come off the ground, and so when I took a step, my toe hit the ground and I wasn't ready for it, and I fell, and all my weight went onto this hand. So this is my left hand. I'm left-handed, so it really sucked. And this is a very sore picture directly after having hurt myself. It's deep. There was blood, so it went through the epidermis and into the dermal region, hit nerves, so it sends a lot of nerve signals through the arm, up to the pinky, all the way down through the arm. Very painful. And so as tissue is repairing itself, it's going to form, so when tissue needs to repair itself, it forms a crust called a scab. That scab is really important because the scab basically protects the underlying tissues. The problem is you have to make sure that you are keeping that tissue clean. And in this case, the scab that was formed had some bacteria and dirt underneath, so that it was not completely clean. And you can tell that by seeing this white mucousy material there. So I had to scrape this tissue off, which is very painful again, to maintain the cleanliness and help my tissue heal. And so this is my tissue about a week later, or a week and a half later. Looks much better here, and it was actually healing. Here I couldn't even open my hand up fully, and it was swelled up. Here it's almost healed, and here is my hand today. Interesting, I still have like a little bit of nerve pain associated with my palm. If I push just right, I can still feel some pain, but other than that, my hand looks perfectly fine. So epithelium tends to regenerate very effectively if the damage is not too deep. Connective tissues, a lot of them can also regenerate. Tissues that can't, your cartilage cannot regenerate, it is avascular. Dense regular connective tissue does not regenerate. Cartilage, dense regular connective tissue, those are the two main ones that don't regenerate. Muscle tissue doesn't tend to regenerate except for smooth muscle, and nerve tissue doesn't tend to regenerate. But even tissues that can regenerate can't if the damage is too deep. And so here is a picture of one of my nephews on my husband's side who was messing with an axe. I think he was, I don't know what he was cutting. I can't tell you this whole story. This was not me. But he was messing with an axe, and somehow he cut his hand deeply. And so you can see the bone here. You can, the damage was very deep, and he ended up having to have surgery to fix the tissues. And so anytime you end up having surgery, you're almost always going to have some form of a scar. And so his hand is almost completely healed, except for that little scar right there that you can see. So that's scar tissue formed because you've damaged the tissue so greatly that you can't form the same tissue. Scar tissue or fibrosis does not give you the same function. You've changed the structure, so the function has changed as well. And so here is your figure from your textbook talking about tissue repair or healing. So the initial damage that occurs is going to immediately send signals to your blood vessels, to the blood cells in the blood vessels, and you're going to have inflammatory response to this area. You're going to have a lot of white blood cells moving to this area to protect the environment. And then you're going to form a blood clot that will eventually scab over. The fibers of the blood clot are actually proteins that mesh with the white and red blood cells, forming that little scab. And that scab's going to sit there while underlying tissues heal. So underneath, you're going to have damage repair, and depending on the type of damage, you may end up having you may end up having scar tissue form, or you may, if scar tissue doesn't form because the damage wasn't too great, then you're going to have you're going to have complete regeneration of the tissue, which is always nice. But once the tissue that's deep has been repaired, then that scab is going to slowly release from the skin and peel off. And then you should have, if everything went well, normal skin with normal function. If you have scar tissue that's means that, that region doesn't have the same function anymore. That's the end of our chapter, which means now you can go through all of chapter 20, what am I talking about? All of chapter 4. You should be able to answer all the questions at the end of the chapter, go through the study guide, and make sure you understand everything in the study guide. Remember, those study guides are extra points that you can gain from just filling them out and making sure you fill them out completely. So start working on chapter 4, and I will be posting chapters 5 lecture shortly, okay? Bye.